So, question, how's life in Naples? How much time are you spending down there right now?
Oh, I've been back and forth. It's almost kind of like 4 or 5 days out of every month. The
Okay.
goal is that I'm backing up from that more, not that I don't love traveling down there, but as we're scaling, we need to be able to make sure new locations
Yeah.
can do this without me going on site. And
Yeah.
so right now, we had kind of a good strategy meeting this morning on how to create some better, more dialed in training processes, just so
Yeah.
that we don't have to go in and jump in and infuse our in-person presence to make that happen.
Do you have an apartment down there? Do you just get a hotel when you stay or?
No, Sean and Lacey, so our business partners with the franchise and business
Mhm.
partners with the Naples location, they live down there. So I just basically
Nice.
have a room at their
Well,
place. Yeah.
well, let's jump in. Thanks for coming on, Doc. Stacy, I wanted to have you on our master class because, I think what I've observed in UAC over the last 15 years is it attracts, there's a lot of visionaries in chiropractic, and there's a lot of high energy visionary connectors and I think for a lot of years through the 70s, 80s, 90s, our profession was kind of built on people that could really like rally and cheer and spizz people up.
Sure.
But what I've noticed, UAC has always attracted hardcore operators. And I've been around enough rah-rah and tried it and bought into it. But at the end of the day, I always like to say the glory is in the execution. And what I love about UAC is there are, I think, the most gifted, talented, hardcore operators, people that make shit happen, that make businesses, they're profitable, they're solid, they're scalable, they're everything we dream about. They're everything that the visionaries kind of rah-rah about. But
Right.
so, anyways, when I think of that
Talk about
person,
it and be about it.
yes.
They're great ideas, but if you can't execute them, then they're worthless. And
And you've been a part of those. I've been a part of those, and it's such an energy suck, and everybody's so excited. But what's really fun is the boring business 5, 10 years down the road that's just throwing off a lot of cash. It's stable. You're not in it all the time, and everybody just about in UAC has figured that part of this out in whatever they're doing. And so when we first met, Stacy, you were practicing in North Dakota, South
yeah,
Dakota, North
North Dakota,
Dakota. I think, did you have two practices maybe at one point?
just
Just
one
the
up
one.
there. Yep.
And you sold that, and then you and Nate got married, and you started over in Indianapolis. And I always knew you for building these really beautiful, solid, subluxation centered, no insurance, cash family practices. And I've just always known you were great at that. And then all of a sudden, I knew you had other stuff going like everybody, but all of a sudden you really kind of dialed in and dipped into this functional regenerative clinic next door to the other one and just had really like put a lot of time in figuring out that model, dialing it in, and in fact even brought my daughter up to see you and you helped Verity with some stem cells. And then next thing I know, you're building this franchise and you're scaling and you're spending time down in Naples. And so there's a lot of people I think on this line that want to scale or have scaled a little bit, but I've gotten because we opened a functional clinic that really tanked and bombed horribly, but you helped me quite a bit, and I got some glimpses into just how much genius and how much knowledge you'd created and built in the space. And so now to see, as we were talking at the top of this,
Yeah.
as you're scaling, I want to dig into that. Really I think what would be interesting for the group is, what have you put in place? You've taken your time. You're not just running. I can tell you're really building this the right way from the ground up. But, we all talk about systems and SOP and KPIs, but I don't know. I feel like there's more behind that story, and I'd love to kind of for you to share that journey. So, I'd like to pick up on maybe with the regenerative functional clinic, where was the success, and then how did that lead to what you're doing in Naples, and then let's talk about where that's going and what's happening with that with Well Infused and what the vision is and how you've prepared yourself to scale that in the proper way. So
Yeah.
sorry, that's a crap ton to talk about, but
Yeah.
let's start
That's
there.
okay. We'll start at the beginning. So
Oh,
so in 2020 COVID time, we were realizing that we wanted access personally to other services, for Nate and I to stay healthy, to stay open, to keep things operating as close to normally as we could. And so we were getting IV therapy, like making sure that we're staying highly, good nutrition, those types of things. The things we'd always done, we were just up leveling those for ourselves. And then we were realizing that our clients were still asking the same questions they've always asked. Well, what are you doing? What should I do? And so we started to get a little bit hesitant referring to all these different places we were going, not really knowing what was happening behind the scenes, knowing
Yeah.
that we were comfortable doing it for us, but not sure we wanted to put our seal of approval on it for
Yeah.
somebody else. And at that same time, we had our daughter when I was just a week shy of 37, was going through lots of hormone changes right after having a baby and then turning 40. And so I was also looking for bioidentical hormone therapy for
Yeah.
myself. And just wasn't finding anyone doing it the way I felt it should be done. So found an amazing nurse practitioner. Her name's Elizabeth, and she's been with us since the beginning of Well Infused, and will really be the clinical and lead clinical director for the franchise as a whole,
Yeah.
just because of her hospital experience meeting my needs, and she needed out at the time that we were opening. And so going through that process of showing her, here's what we find as being a need in the community, here's what I want for myself, does this align with the way you want to practice? And it was basically, how it works when you sit down with someone and you have a meeting and you just know that this is going to work out the way
Absolutely.
it's.
Yeah.
We keep joking. I was like, you know what? I never did get your application, and she's like, yeah, and you're never gonna get it. So we just knew that it would work, and we've worked very closely together. With her, with Nate and I, and now with our franchise, co-owners Shondell and Lacey Book, to create the systems and procedures that made it not just replicatable from one location, but to now two locations, the practice in Naples. And as I just got a message about 30 minutes ago that we have confirmation, we're going to sell locations 6, 7, and 8 on Monday. So those are going to
Awesome.
go through. So yeah, so very
Wow.
exciting. But even when we're doing our best work, it helps us to up level, knowing that we've got people from all ranges, from a nurse practitioner buying to somebody to a chiropractor to somebody who's never been in healthcare profession before, looking at this as a business opportunity. So we had to not only create good systems in location number 1, but now create SOPs that people could follow in location number 2. And now learning that we need to create video tutorials and like a well-infused university to be able to make sure that this is replicatable among different locations. So service menu has, started off really being interested in IVs and hormones, which I know now would be difficult to build a business off of, especially at scale, only those services.
Interesting.
So we do a lot of work with functional medicine as our foundation. Another UAC member really being our support system, Dr. Stephen Janopoulos, has really made a shift in his business model to be able to support Well Infused because of how much he believes in it.
Yeah.
So he's an integral part of that. So basically every client who comes in gets this foundation of functional medicine first. And then we figure out what they truly need. Always like chiropractic, like let's address root cause. Root cause goes back to, are there any deficiencies in your system keeping you from healing the way that you should? Or are there toxins in your system that don't belong there that we need to figure out a way to help your body get rid of? So bioidentical hormones, IV therapy, the functional medicine. We do a lot of work with ozone therapy, now peptides, and also the regenerative medicine. So it's we feel like we've got the services really dialed in, and now it's doing a really great job of replicating those SOPs and those standing orders in a way that new locations can kind of take the playbook, which is now literally 900 pages and probably 15 hours of videos. How can we give that to them in a way that they can learn and implement?
So something that you touched on right out of the bat that I think is a common thread I see in people doing the kinds of stuff you guys are doing. You have an innate ability to attract really amazing people and partners. And that's one of the things I tend to see. I don't know how to explain this, Staci, but it's evident. And you attracted that key person and you continue to. What do you think that is? Because it's hard. We built a whole company with Chiro Matchmakers on behavioral assessments, on cognitive assessments, and that's a helpful tool, but that's not the same as this sort of innate ability to
No.
not only attract in, but recognize maybe the counterpart or the complementary skill set to you. And that again, when I look around the room at UAC, it's not just a sole person. They're usually not that big of a business if it is. It's when you get behind the team, behind the person, they are remarkable, and almost always everybody on the team is better than the leader, and so, but I'm just curious, what are your, did you, I don't know, have you thought about that? Because it's evident in what you're doing. Did you put any intention behind that? Anything to speak to there?
Yeah, I sometimes joke it's just a whole lot of prayer, but honestly, it's a whole lot of prayer.
Yeah.
That for me is just like a constant daily, like I don't know how you get through some days without it. That's just necessary. But I also think that just being very clear on what you want to accomplish, like nature abhors a void. So it's going to fill that with the person who can help. And not to say that we always get it right. And sometimes things change and you have to make a strategic change.
Yeah.
But those key people, I think that's just I wish it wasn't like just this inherent ability because I wish I could teach it to other people. But I mean, I still have employees from my very first chiropractic office that I'm in touch with. I mean, I had a skincare business when I was back in North Dakota. I guess I did have two practices, just one wasn't chiropractic, but I had a skincare business and she was my front desk CA. And then I sent her to esthetician school and then she ended up buying my skincare practice. And I'm still in touch with her, like emailed her
Oh,
within
that's
the
awesome.
last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Our business that Nate and I built in Noblesville from a chiropractic standpoint, our front desk manager is still there today. She was there before we opened putting furniture together. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is attract the right people, like know very clearly what you're looking for, but then nurture them well, like take care of them well.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean just pay them well. Like most of our employees have stuck with us because of the culture that we've created. Like they don't want to go somewhere else where, they're going to be required to do certain health and medical things to get a job. They know they're going to get paid and taken care of. They know that if something goes wrong, like they've got a team behind them that's going to support them to make sure that whether it's at home or at work that we get them through. I also feel like, I was having a conversation with my coach and mentor this week about, okay, I'm really starting to feel like what I've done up to this point is the same for everyone. What got me here isn't going to get me there. What do I need to do next to make sure that as these new locations start to open, that they're successful in the same way that we've been successful in the first two locations? And while the basic work, like the writing up of the SOPs needs to happen, a lot of what will make them effective is the vibration and the energy that's put into creating them. Not the person who's typing out the words, but the intent behind it. And so we all know as chiropractors, like every living thing has a cellular vibration, and we can change vibration levels with who we, what we do and how we think and who we are and who we surround ourselves by. And so I'm trying to really very intentionally make sure that as I'm creating the most mundane of SOPs, that there's a lot of energy that goes into the why behind the what. And I think the same thing translates to from an SOP to a hiring. Like, here's what I want for you. Here's what I envision for a year from now from your employment. Does this look like something that you're looking for? And people want that. I mean, they want growth. And sometimes that doesn't mean climbing a ladder. In small businesses, there's not much of a ladder to climb. But do you grow as a person, even in that same role, in a way that will be fulfilling for the long term?
Something I've seen as a misstep that you just kind of inadvertently explained is a lot of people try to outsource the SOP to AI, to a practitioner. And there's a lot of magic in you as the business creator, founder, visionary, putting down that SOP that guides that business the way you want it guided. I think that's a major misstep. That was certainly one of the missteps in our functional clinic, was having all these other people create SOP, and then you get this disconnect from the vision of where this thing started. But that kind of leads me into, I'm curious. In most of our UAC members have scaled, well, lots of different kinds of businesses, but not many people, if anybody I can think of, has really scaled this functional world the way you are. And one of my challenges in doing that was, chiropractors are unique, and I've learned over my career how to work with chiropractors, and I think there's a lot of strength in our uniqueness. And when I found I was dealing with nurses and nurse practitioners, I had taken a lot of things for granted, little things like how protective nurse practitioners were about their scope of practice. Not even protective, but nervous about their scope of
True.
practice.
Hmm.
Their idea of extra money was overtime, not
Yeah.
sales commission. Back to, like, they were kind of, a lot of the people I was trying to work with were clueless on SOPs. They didn't have that passion and innate understanding of health at the cellular level from the inside out, which is the foundation of chiropractic. So they're applying their outside and medical knowledge to this novel thing of functional medicine. So I'm curious, how have you solved for that as you scale, as you have people that aren't chiropractors buying these franchises? How do you work around that variable in this?
Yeah, it was a conversation that we even had this morning too, as we're just making some strategic changes and planning for these new locations to open. One of the biggest things when we're looking for the providers is like the skills can be taught. We have the SOPs for that. Like there's 1,000 mundane pages of that, but the skills can be taught. Do you see health in the same way that we do? And so typically our approach to hiring is you go in the Crunchy Moms groups on Facebook and be like,
Hmm.
hey, anybody know like a holistic minded nurse practitioner? And those people will come to the surface.
Yeah.
Very different than an Indeed ad where you try to describe it, but you're going to get a lot of people who love the functional word buzzword. They like the hours that you've scheduled, but have no ability to see things from your standpoint, or who come into the office. When we were hiring the first ones, it was very easy because when they were walking into the office, the RNs for a job interview, if they were wearing a mask, I was like, oh, okay.
Interview's done.
Yeah, that was easy.
Yeah.
Because you just know they doesn't matter how much you educate them, they're never going to be able to break that.
Yeah.
But there are so many providers in the system that just don't know a way out of the system. That with every service they're providing, they're like feeling like they're selling their soul because it's not something they'd ever do for their own family. We have a nurse here in Noblesville location that came from like Riley Peds ICU. Like she was like, I could not continue, like I care for these patients, but what I was being told to do for them was so contrary to everything my gut instinct told me that I just couldn't survive in that environment.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of when it comes to that hiring and understanding their mindset is, yes, they're going to be productive over their license, same as we are, right? Like there's certain things we can't do. If we start, as a chiropractor start prescribing medication, we should be concerned about our license. Well, they're responsible for this, but within guidelines. And so our task was basically figuring out what are the strictest guidelines across all 50 states, and then we implement that as our standard of excellence when it comes to well infused, so that we are protecting that nurse practitioner. Above the nurse practitioner, you have to have a medical director in most states. So again, we just do the same standard across all, well, there's certain states we won't go into with the franchise that we've already told people no to, but in most of the states, we just go to the highest standard of excellence to make sure that we are preserving their licensure, and then creating the systems for the nurses to do that. So we're having to follow their licensure guidelines, but there's a whole lot of leeway in how we do that just based on our medical director's oversight. So when we're providing ozone therapy to someone, something that their license allows in their scope, but they would never do in the medical world, we just need to make sure that they understand the why behind the what, they understand the research that is there. Of course, there are consent forms saying we're not treating a disease. It's really interesting, the crossover between what we do in a functional medicine practice and chiropractic. I am not treating a disease. I am not diagnosing you. I am trying to address the root cause of the underlying problem, whatever name you happen to give that.
Yeah.
And so when they understand root cause and they understand that we are trying to just help the body by itself function the way it was designed by removing toxins or adding nutrition, they get really excited about that. And when they've had a personal experience or a personal story, most of our nurse practitioners have had this aha moment that got them to see things this way. Those are the people that you hold on to, and when their vibration level is high, it makes it much easier as you continue to train an admin, or as you continue to train an RN underneath them. When they have that confidence and they see those patient outcomes, it just becomes easier and easier and snowballs in the best of ways.
I love it. So can I talk business numbers with you and ask some questions there?
A little
First,
bit. For franchise reasons, there are some numbers that I can't.
just say that if I step into that, of course, we all
No problem.
understand.
Yep.
First, I'm just curious, you probably put at least 4 years of your time, energy, money learning this, and then let alone you're touching on the legalities, the lawyers, the attorneys, the EHR systems, the protocols, the education. Have you
Yep.
put a dollar amount on how much you personally have invested to this point, getting the business
Yeah.
to this launch point? And did you help supplement that with some other investment? Have you done it all yourself? Can you talk a little bit about the front end of it first?
Yeah, we're probably at $2 million to get us to where we are right now,
Hmm.
conservatively, and that's probably without actually accounting for my time,
Yeah.
which would make, because when there's no cash flow for a new
Yeah.
business, you can't pay me for my time.
Yep.
And so that would be an easy estimate just based on what we have done to open location number one. The time it takes to go through, I mean, the number of attorneys we have is ridiculous. Like, I have so many different types of attorneys on retainer. I'm like, do we really need, like, I thought we had that covered. Well, yes, we had it covered from a franchise compliance standpoint, not from a nursing, like, licensure
Yeah.
standpoint. Great. Okay, so we'll do that too. And so that certainly accounts for how we've gotten our systems and procedures to where they are. I execute fast. I am an operator. I am a workhorse. And so when I was told that it would take at least 2 years to decide I want this to become a franchise, to getting those franchise documents done, it took 2.5 years. Like, I was floored at how long that
Wow.
actually took, knowing how much time I put into
Who
it.
do you, who does that have to be registered with? It's not the FDIC, but who's the federal licensing board that you have to
Gosh.
put everything through?
You know what? That's a good
I
question.
forget.
I forget the registering agency, but there's a federal level of franchise
Yeah.
disclosure document that has to be filed. And in some states you have to file it individually with the state. They don't accept the federal filing.
Mm.
And so that's not difficult, but another thing like you just have to figure out and know how to do.
Yeah.
But to be able to make sure that that was compliant, because we don't want Stark laws to come into play. We don't want conflict of interest. I'm a business owner and a provider recommending a service I can't actually perform. So we had to make sure that all of those regulations were compliant from a legal standpoint before it gets reviewed, because they can deny your application as a franchise. Like,
Yeah.
if they don't feel like you have your ducks in order. So easily, $2 million in 2.5 years. And that probably doesn't completely account for what we have spent in advertising, not the franchise, because we've never advertised the franchise, but advertising to be able to get patients in Naples to a cold market. So in
Yeah.
Noblesville, we started next door to our chiropractic office. That was an easy feeder system. Naples was different, and intentionally done so to see how we could do this in a cold market, because if we can't do it, then certainly a franchisee is not going to be capable of
Yeah.
it. And so that's taken a lot, but we've tested the system. So now when a new franchisee opens, we have a pre-opening marketing strategy. We know what marketing strategies have worked in both locations. In Naples, we've now had to account for how do things work when there's seasonal people. Like, how do we make our memberships work for people who are only maybe there 4 or 5 months out of the year
Yeah.
in a way that's not going to disrupt our normal rhythm and our normal flow. And so
Yeah.
it's been interesting to get to this point. There are some days where I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't we just stay with our one really great chiropractic office where I was done at 6 o'clock, and like there was nothing like it. I mean, but that's why I did it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why Nate and I both did it. Maybe he'd probably tell you I'm the driver on that a little bit more than he is. But it's because I got bored, right? Like, I couldn't just keep doing the same thing, and so I was like, okay, what's next? And that became what was next.
That really summarizes why people are in UAC. You don't have that switch to just put it in neutral and coast. If you're
Non-existent.
striving for more. So then, can you talk a little bit and work it around what you can and can't disclose? But what is the model? I'm sure there's a lot of UAC members going, should I open one of these? So I'm curious, what's the upfront investment? What kind of numbers does a clinic annually, if it's maybe average middle of the road, doing? What's the profit margins on functional? I think of I kind of see in today's world, I think of the lens of a straight chiropractic office that's really slaying, usually does, a million seems to be kind of the average for a solid practice, maybe 1.5. Then it
Mhm.
seems like when clinics throw in, other things like maybe a functional component or decompression or shockwave, you see clinics get maybe up to 2 or 3 or
Mhm.
occasionally higher than that. But these are just freestanding functional clinics, none of that other stuff. So do you mind? I mean, I'm curious, what do the numbers kind of look like on a high level for
Yeah.
that?
Next week we'll be filing our second year FDD, and that'll be the first time that we have in there what's called an item 19, which kind of goes through and outlines that. We have only included Noblesville numbers for that because it's got enough history that the numbers feel accurate. So by year 2, we were over that million mark. By year 3, we're going to be pushing like probably 1.7. And that's not at capacity. That, quite frankly, when we opened Noblesville, we opened 3 days per week. We are now busy enough that we're open 6 days per week most of the time. Once in a while, there's a rare Saturday that's over spring break that there just wasn't traffic. But at about that 6-day-a-week mark, profit margins are different. Like when you're adjusting a patient, that doesn't, like, your hands, we know that the lights have to stay on and you're paying your admin, but there's no cost. There's no cost of goods sold involved with that. So that was a big learning curve for us, that, oh my gosh, we could be pulling in the same amount of cash, but we're not keeping the same amount of cash.
Yeah.
But the value in still doing it that way and not scaling a chiropractic office from my standpoint and really scaling this is the reach that we're able to have for people who are looking for labs, who are looking for hormones. We feel like a best case scenario is really like a chiropractor who teams up with a nurse practitioner. And we have several in the pipeline that are going to be doing this, opening up next door, opening up across the street so that they have that feeder system for it. But at the end of the day, when there's so many chiropractors who will ask, well, should I become a nurse practitioner? I'm like, no. That is, that's backward thinking to this. Like, the whole goal is to create this business that you believe in and that you want services from for yourself, but that you're not literally having your hands in, because then that's not scale. Then that's just you splitting your hours between different services that you're performing. So how do we help you find the right people and train them in a way that you can be like the poster child in the community of like, yep, this is what I do. Let me send you here. We have people fly in from all over the country to our 2 locations already for the stem cells that we do. We do them right, and we do them really well and get great outcomes. And so to answer kind of the original question, like, it's a $50,000 investment for the franchise. Most people can expect probably between $400,000 and $500,000 for getting their build out ready to go. We have arrangements with every vendor, with every peptide company, we have all of that packaged in a way that every franchisee going forward is going to do so much better than we have, because now we've negotiated rates for them when they open at high volume rates. And we've partnered with other companies so that we get those, like, as though we had 1,000 locations open, that's the pricing our new franchisees are going to be able to get. And part of that goes back to connections. Like, I've just said yes to the right phone calls over the last 3 years, where sometimes I get off, sometimes I'm still on the call and I'm like, listen, we're small. Like, I know you have 1,000 locations for this other company. I'm 2, hoping to open between 5 and 10 this year. What's in it for you to partner with me? And usually the answer is just like, I'm not sure how I got on the phone with you either at only your locations, but this is a great partnership and we can't wait to help you. And so a lot of those relationships that we've established are going to benefit absolutely every single franchise moving forward, which has me excited, which means the item 19 and the FDD that's coming out, while it looks good and people will buy because those numbers look good, they will only continue to get better, which is very exciting.
I love it, Staci. That is. So who's your avatar? Let's talk about how you're going to grow this. Who are you finding have bought franchises? How are you finding them? Sorry, on the ownership side, not the client side. Give me some insights there.
So I believe an ideal avatar for someone buying a franchise is going to involve a nurse practitioner at some level. The nurse practitioner is a key individual in the business because of, number one, their knowledge and expertise and their ability to guide that clinic and their nursing team. But also they need to have a little bit of sales experience or sales motivation in them, because they're the ones responsible when they sit down and go over a lab review for taking that lab review from, okay, here's your data, to accountability and signing up for a membership so that we can partner with you to watch these changes happen over the next year. And so if they are an investor, even small percentage in the company, they're going to be a lot more motivated and understand from a business standpoint why making confident recommendations, ethical recommendations, but confident ones, is going to be so crucial. And so I'm really excited because we have a nurse practitioner who's purchased. I think we're going to have another one probably by the end of May. And I kind of think they're set up for the most success as compared to are business owners who are going to do this as an investment, not really having any healthcare experience.
Yeah.
The people who are interested in Well Infused not having healthcare experience is because they've seen some of those numbers and they understand that what they expect to make on this makes sense. They're aligned with the vision, so it's not as though they're just doing this from paper alone. They're aligned with the vision, and so they jump onto the opportunity as an investment. But I'm hopeful that for them, we're able to help them hire the right nurse practitioners. And then we do have a lot of chiropractors who have gotten on the phone with us and are interested. Some of them will be adding this onto their current location, which I think is brilliant. Others opening it as a separate, more standalone clinic, which will work just the same. Some of them, actually chiropractors who are just getting ready to phase out. They're like, listen, I'm ready to phase out of hands-on adjusting, and I have the right people to buy my business, so it makes sense to sell my business right now. But then what? So we have one chiropractor who just sold that will be opening multiple locations and wants to be a regional developer. She's like, I've got so much more in me for the next couple of decades. She goes, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so the avatar, I really think, is probably a partnership between somebody who understands business and aligns with the vision and the mission of the company, and then a nurse practitioner who they're going to then really create a great partnership with. And they're not going to have to worry about nurse practitioner turnover, because that's going to be your biggest hiccup when that happens. And we've actually gone through that in Naples already. And I know why that happened. It's because we have to know how to navigate the hiccup for when it's going to happen to somebody else. And so right now we're working on 2 different training modules, one for a brand new startup practice, but also training modules for, okay, if you're replacing an employee, here's how we do it just a little bit differently to get them caught up to speed and integrate back into the practice as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I can see kind of almost building your own course, how helpful that is, because it was really hard to outsource that. Is we were bringing nurse practitioners that, to really capture our values, it was hard. There was not one place to send them. And so now you're in this whole other conversation of how much time are you wasting instead of learning them what they need, teaching them what they need to know based on the values you have that are driving the business. What is this, Staci? What's the dream of this? Do you plan to exit? Do you plan to keep it for decades? Do you, if this kind of played out exactly like you envision, how many clinics does that go to, and what does it play out like in the future?
Well, interestingly enough, we've had buyout opportunities already, like at 2 locations, which seems super silly to me. Like, I know there's so much potential, but that's also why I'm holding on to it and not selling at 2 locations. We know that at some point exit is inevitable. I mean, I think when I was new to chiropractic and like when I graduated, I bought my first practice and I was like, oh, this is my baby. I will always be the only chiropractor. I will never sell. And wow, how your perspective changes. I brought on four associates. I eventually sold a portion and then sold the remainder. And that was the right thing to do. If I'd had ego about me and just been like, nope, I'm sticking to my guns. I'm never leaving. This is mine, and I don't want anybody else's influence. That wouldn't, what got you there won't get you here. So I really think for us going into this, we knew that exit would be the goal. We thought and laughed when people are like, just wait till you have 100 locations. And I was like, oh my gosh, that'll never happen. Well, we, without advertising, will sell through number 8 next week. And that's not putting effort toward finding buyers, because one of our big keys has been infrastructure before growth. Like, if we don't have the system to sell, we're not going to get the cart before the horse. Like, we need to make sure when we, like, another key phrase for us is franchises sold to franchises opened and highly profitable and successful franchisees. If we can't do those things, we don't have a business model to sell. And so we're highly motivated to make sure that we're creating that infrastructure on multiple different levels. But I think the goal for us now, like 100 seems incredibly attainable, which even coming out of my mouth still sounds like a little bit crazy. But it is. I mean, just to see what we've done in the first 6 months of having an official franchise, 100 seems very reasonable. We have had a lot of franchise consultants try to attach to our company very quickly that told us, oh, you can open 100 in your first 2 years. Well, that sounds unreasonable. Like, that sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. So that's kind of our red flag of, oh, nope, you're not the consultant for us, because we want to do this right, not do this fast. But I would expect that based on similar business models that don't offer the robust number of services or, quite frankly, the systems that we have.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that they're selling at about 100, I imagine that we'll have a really good buyout opportunity before we get there, but we'll probably hold on until that long because of the projections we've been given of what the company should be worth at that point.
Yeah, from my familiarity with other businesses in similar but different spaces, if you're already getting referrals, I wouldn't be surprised if you can grow to 100 just on people referring their friends who bought a clinic. And that's such different, easier, just like a practice with referred
Mhm.
patients. Very different than when you're having to go out in the market and solicit
Yeah.
people. Um, what's the valuation on franchises? How do they, I have no idea. Do they value that on,
You know
yeah,
what?
how do they value that?
I don't really know either because just like when we kind of laughed at 100 locations, the valuation that we've been given a couple of different times for the company, estimated at 5 years, it's wild. We get estimates between 300 and 600 million dollars,
So they
which
project out to a 5 year and then base their modeling for your
yeah.
value on that. That's interesting.
But they also wanted to buy in at the value it is now with a
Ah,
payout at their projections. So we're like,
yeah.
that doesn't math very well.
Well, why don't we get it to the 500,
Yeah.
600, and then you can buy in then.
And then we can. So we bootstrapped it. Like we don't have any investors. I mean, between Nate and I, and then our business partner Sean and Lacey, it's been. I mean, everything, every overflow we have goes into building this model because we believe in the not just the probability, but the inevitable success of the company. We just aren't clear yet at such an early stage exactly
Yeah.
what that looks like. But we've had opportunities for lots of different investors and just turned it down because not knowing what this is worth and knowing we want to keep control over it until we feel really good about it running
Yeah.
kind of independently, then we want to continue to hold on to that from an investment standpoint, but also from a control standpoint.
Yeah, I like how you're doing it. You know, that keeping the end in mind of an exit, but building something that you don't have to sell, that you want to keep running is such a different. You don't jump on with a consultant who wants to W too quick. You just, your values and your choices are different if you're building something that you can live with for the next 20 years and stay inside of working to get it to where you want to. And I think, I don't know, I noticed in UAC is there's more exits, more scaling, more private equity coming into people's businesses, more venture capital.
Yeah.
That is something that, you know, everybody can kind of get seduced by the exit. And it's like, time out. I think the exit's better if you don't worry so much about the exit and build something you want to stay in throughout your life. So,
Yeah, we get every week we get people interested in buying in, and it's just been like I just delete the emails. I don't even entertain them at this point because I'm just I don't have time for the conversation. Like
yeah.
I'm too busy building and making sure the infrastructure is sound to even entertain those conversations. We know that that will come up. We have had just a really, again, just I applied for this competition for Lacey and I
Oh, yeah.
to go
Yeah.
to go in and basically it was a pitch. It was basically like Shark Tank, but we're pitching a prospective franchise. And so we put in this application. I filled out the application. I'm like, I don't know, energy is everything. So let me fill out the application. And of all the applications they received, I fully expected that we would be on the finalist list. Like I knew that. I knew what we had at that point, that there's no way
Yeah.
we wouldn't be on the finalist list. So there were three finalists that finally pitched on the stage, John Teza and then Shane Evans, who have Hand and Stone, and then John's got another franchise in a similar industry.
Okay.
And so they were on the stage. Bethany Frankel was on stage.
Got off stage, and then what happened?
Yeah, so we got off stage, we listened to the other two, and we were like, we've got this. Like, there's no question that we've got this one. And so we won $50,000, just blanket investment
Awesome.
for no equity. We had to double check all the paperwork, but for no equity in the company. That really helped us as far as kind of finalizing when it came to our FDD and getting our attorneys paid and
Yeah.
all sorts of cool stuff. So just the ability to be able to have that as evidence that we might be small and we might be new, but other people in the industry believe in us enough to it just gives us a lot of credibility getting started. So that was
I
a
love
fun
it.
experience, but allowed us to do some coaching with people who've been running franchises for a very long time, which is just such a great opportunity for us too.
Yeah, this arc of your learning curve is going to be impressive. What I think is going to be fun is in however long when you're suddenly sitting on 500 million, a billion, whatever, after selling this. And that's, I think, when most people in UAC, that's where I see our future is now we've all got this knowledge base of everything you've learned and then taking it to an exit. Then what do we do? That's where I think it really gets
So,
fun. Like we're now we've all got capital to deploy at scale
yeah,
with knowledge, and I'm excited for where this is going in the future.
yeah,
So, Dr. Stacy, thank you for sharing that arc. I know
yeah.
I hope you don't get too inundated with just lots of questions because you're a wealth of knowledge. You figured out so much, and thank you for being such an open book with us about it. We're cheering for you, and I love what you're doing, and we're honored to have you as part of the group.
Thanks. It's been, well, my husband and I wouldn't be together. We wouldn't have our daughter if it wasn't for UAC. I mean, like UAC is a big part of our lives, and so are the people in it, and so we're just so grateful for that too.
And we are you. Were you one of the founding members, or was it a little
Nate
after?
was in meeting number 2 or number 3, I
Okay,
think, and then I was in, I think, year 2, so pretty early on. It's been,
cool,
yep,
awesome,
been a long
love
time.
it. Well, congratulations on the success,
Thanks.
Stacy, and thanks for all your help always.
Yeah,
You've always been a great sounding board for me, and
appreciate
good
that.
luck with this. Can't wait to see where it goes.
Thanks. Talk soon.
Okay, see ya. Bye.